listening to the Podcast Advertising Playbook, your resource to better understand and execute successful podcast ad campaigns. Hello and welcome to the Podcast Advertising Playbook. I'm your host, Heather Osgood, and today is probably the most exciting episode of the podcast that I have had. I am joined today by Stew Redwine. He is the Vice President of Creative Services at Oxford Road. I'm also joined by Oskar Serrander. He's the co-founder and CEO of Wondercraft. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Heather. So great to be here.
So we are doing this interview on Halloween, and I kid you not,
is it
just
Halloween?
Before the interview, I thought, wouldn't it be so cool if both of these guys dressed up in costumes because it's Halloween? And now I feel like I am the oddball out because I don't have a costume.
It's not too late if you want to do a wardrobe change in the middle.
Yeah, or you could say, I mean, you could be a number of things. You could say you're a radio host, not a podcast host.
I like it.
Right?
I would
That's
rather
easy.
be a YouTube star. Could we
Okay,
do that?
okay, there you go.
YouTuber.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
You're a YouTuber.
You
Okay.
have 50 million followers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping. So before we jump into today's conversation, I'd love for you guys just to talk a little bit about your respective companies and kind of a little bit about the clients that you service and what your role is here in the podcast space. So Stu, I think that obviously Oxford has been around for many, many years now. Very excited that you guys just went through this awesome acquisition and can't wait to see how all of that pans out here in the months and years to come. But tell us a little bit about Oxford Road and what you guys do.
Absolutely. So we do an annual Halloween costume contest, and I am joined with James Ingracia, who's the head of our accounts. That's who's behind me. We're the wet bandits. So I just wanted to clear that up. First things first. And we have a ton of fun at Oxford Road. We always have. Like, our culture is a big piece of it. Like you said, you know, with the news in the last week, in combining with Veritone One, that's big news. It's exciting. I also think of the story that they say when Elvis Presley died, the colonel came in and he said, "This changes nothing." In many regards, it's like nothing changes. We're just going to keep doing what we've done, which we're in it for the love of the game. We have a ton of fun. We help brands test and scale into audio. And with this recent combination with Veritone One and what will come from that, that it just allows us to do that at an even greater scale. And we're talking about brands like Shopify and Indeed, Tommy John, Moinkbox.com with Lucinda Clark over there, who we've been with for a number of years, Blinds.com, just to name a few folks that what we've identified, we're in service of the chief audio officer. That's the person that's responsible for the dollars that are being invested in audio. And we see the power of audio, that it is such a incredible canvas for the open exchange of ideas and to impact people's hearts and minds. And so therefore, if you're putting a marketing message out there, it's an incredible place to do that. So we see huge opportunity in audio for brands. That's what we've been doing since the beginning. And it's just like, kind of got to pinch myself with, you know, the news and everything that's happened recently to go, oh, wow. But it's like, it's what we've been doing ever since the beginning. We're just now going to be able to do it on an even larger scale.
Well, and I think to me, you just summed it up, right? You know, at True Native, we've been working with we worked with Performance Bridge, and then we worked with Veritone One. Obviously, we've worked with Oxford Road for a number of years. And I'm excited because what I see is just more of what has been a great thing. And being able to service more clients, being able to work at a greater scale. So I'm really excited about it. And it sounds like you are too, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
So Oskar, tell us a little bit about Wondercraft and what you do there.
Yeah, actually, we're having a lot of fun too. We just created and published still films on our social media, which is fun for an audio creative studio to do. I'm also an elf. I always hear that I look young, but I'm actually 500 years old. So there's that. I mean, we're also in service of, you know, anyone creating audio, and really storytelling is what we're all about. So Wondercraft is kind of your Adobe Creative Suite for audio creation, right? So it's a creative application for scripting, voicing, and mixing audio for advertising, voiceovers, meditations, any voiced audio content, really. Advertising is a big kind of growth area for us. So working with audio platforms like radio and streaming companies, podcast networks, brands directly, and of course, agencies who serve brands and, making this space grow and thrive is what we do. And on top of that, we work with everything from marketers, film and production studios to traditional media publishers as well. So we span quite a large part of servicing creatives in creative industry as a whole. And really our mission is to make audio more accessible to more storytellers and creative teams all around the world. And we launched in February this year. I have a long history in audio. I started on the agency side actually a couple of 100 years ago. And then I was at Spotify and iHeart and Acast, which I left last year to launch Wondercraft. And we now operate in 30 languages and have customers in almost 50 countries around the world. And you can get started for free at wondercraft.ai.
What I love about the podcast
Bravo.
space is that it really is becoming and is international. I feel like when I started, it was so focused on the US. And then it was like, oh, wait, there are people that are listening in Canada. Oh, and there's people in Australia and there's people in the UK. And now it really is so international. But tell us a little bit about the AI component of Wondercraft, because I'm interested, I guess, what percentage of your business is really impacted by AI or delivers AI services?
Yeah, so I mean, we are an AI-powered platform, right? It enables what we do. But what's more important for how we wanted to build this, I've been working with brands and creatives for my entire career. I started in student radio, and just creating is all part of it. And what we're building is a platform that really enhances the creative work, right? In the way that I see there's a very optimistic future for podcasting. I mean, if you look at it this way, first of all, in podcasting, AI is a very wide concept as well. It's basically saying digital media. So the applications are quite many in podcasting, but I'm very, very optimistic about a lot of things in podcasting can be enhanced with AI. And, podcasting is kind of a smaller piece of a wider audio industry, but I believe that there are some key battlefields that I think we can solve using technology in the future. Is why I'm so bullish on podcasting that I've been in for, over 10 years now. And what we're doing at Wondercraft is really making audio more accessible to work with, as I say. But I can talk a little bit about the battlefields, the way that I look at the industry and how it can be solved, and why I left Acast to really go after this opportunity to try to grow this industry. The first one is discoverability. I think that's still a big problem in podcasting,
such
right?
An issue. Why is it such an issue?
I mean, it's hard, but I'm very optimistic about it. When you see how it's progressed, like there's several platforms out there, including Spotify and YouTube, that are already using AI and machine learning really to help you improve how you find your next favorite show, etc. So I think there's good things coming there. There might be consolidation of listeners and users on certain platforms that help kind of spiral that. Video is going to play a component. We see these reports that short form video helps drive discoverability. So I feel very optimistic about that. And technology plays an enormous piece of solving discoverability, right? I mean, Netflix is the best example. They use a lot of this to give you your favorite show. They know what your patterns are and are able to serve that up to you. The second battlefield, I think, is like data, targeting, brand safety, attribution, all those things that make an industry really work for brands, and all the amazing chief audio officers that Stew and Oxford Road work with to really make audio a valuable place for marketers to spend time and invest in. I think that's important, but I think that's also making progress. But the third one is the one I am most interested in, and why we started Wondercraft, which is really getting more brands into audio. And I think more brands will mean more money and more to creators and to the platforms and agencies that support this ecosystem. And it will just start this flywheel that this industry really needs, right? I think there's been, podcasting, in my opinion, for the past years, has been a little bit a place of scarcity. It's always, there's not a ton of creators in the space compared to other media channels, right? Or media industries. And I would argue that it's a pretty close market in that way. And I think the creation and being able to make audio more interesting to work with for both creators, and what we're focusing a lot on is the brand side of being able to create more marketing campaigns, more variations, and make audio easier to approach further upstream in kind of that creative process. That's a very important part of this, as our mission is. So my vision here for Wondercraft is that we want to serve and help the next millions of brands come into audio because it's easier to work with. They can start in the creative process. Think about how they can express themselves with audio, and then start getting that into through the industry and start getting more investment and money back into the industry. That's really how we should grow it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Stu, I'm really curious, especially, in the creative process right now, what role is AI actually playing? Because I feel like it's one of those things where we say like, oh, AI, 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 but like, what does that mean? And Oskar, you did such a great job identifying those three different opportunities. I think that you're spot on with those. But I guess I'm curious, what is actually happening with AI right now? We can look at the potential, but what's happening today?
Yeah, happy to answer that because I've definitely got a front row seat and am working with Oskar and others in testing and putting these tools through the paces. So the first thing I think of is it's very quickly getting to, like, Fiverr dropped this video, I think, in the last week, like, nobody cares that you're using AI, and it's a whole musical, which isn't to knock what like Oscar's genius in what he's doing is he's not leading with AI. It's like a log line for a film. It's a Canva for audio. It's Adobe Creative Suite for audio. Like, that's a shortcut. That's a tool that helps me get to my solution sooner. I think that's really important. Not leading with, it's kind of like saying, like, our firm uses the internet and electricity. It's like, oh, good, cool, nice to
You
know.
use computers? That's
We use
great.
computer. We also take out our trash. I mean, it's like, okay,
I
nice. You have
love
it.
that analogy so much because I mean, you guys are not as old as I am, but I remember a day when the internet was not a thing. And when I had to go around and tell companies, yes, you really should have a website. I promise you, this is a good thing for your
Yeah,
business.
yeah,
And
yeah,
them
yeah.
saying, no, it's not. And I'm like, yeah, it is. I
Yes,
promise.
it is. So yeah, and then it becomes baseline. I would say a couple thoughts I have on AI, like general thoughts, and they're not unique to me, is like the problem with most creative, uh, 84% of creative, right? 16% of creative is correctly remembered and attributed. All right. So bland creative is the norm. AI allows us to make more bland creative more quickly. That's like the main thing it does. It allows lazy people to make more lazy work, more lazily, right? So that's like the negative view, right? Or
Mhm.
but I see that. So the other thing is you've got to find out very quickly too, like, where do you stand from ethics standpoint, frankly, and who you're
Right.
doing business with. Where are the lane lines? It's really important to, like, find out where everybody's at and establish what makes the most sense. So those are a couple things. Like, my first would be like this watch out, like, don't just use it as a crutch to make more bland creative quickly, okay? And
Hmm.
know that there's going to be a gravitational pull towards that. So it's
Hmm.
like you have to go in resisting that urge. Okay, so I'm not going to allow it to allow me to make more lame stuff more quickly. A. B, where's everybody at on this? Everybody that's invested, stakeholders, where do you guys really come down on this? Have we decided, has your legal team, or even just as individuals, like, where's everybody at on Gen AI? Figure out where all, and then once you have all that alignment, okay, what you actually ask, how are you using it? I think it is a fantastic writing partner. I find that in the creative process, there's all kinds of people, right? There's the kinds of people, like, if you do the brick and the blanket thing, like, how many things can you do with a brick and a blanket? There are people that can instantly just go.
Hmm.
And then there's the people, we all know them, and a lot of them are in the creatives of fields that are, I'm an introvert. Don't put me on the spot. It takes me a minute to think about it. Da, 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 da. And it's like, I get it. I happen to be more like that. Okay, so what generative AI does for me on the front end is it helps a guy like me, at least a person like me, break through that initial tranche
Right.
where I'm like, hey, give me 50 ideas of how a blue desk is like the moon when, and, with a scuba diver saying poetry. Like, you give it anything, what I love about chat primarily, or Claude, is it goes, sir, yes, sir. And it accepts the mission. And then it just goes,
Yeah.
and then I'll land the plane here. It's a great, like, breakthrough tool. Not that the thing it even generates or the ideas it generates you're going to use. It just kind of helps shorten the path.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that. And then two, I find that, like, with Ostrich School in particular, he's made it so smooth, so, like, effortless, just like it delivers on the process of Canva for audio, that the way we're primarily using it is to very quickly get to finished outputs that I can press play on in presentations. So for instance, like I'll just full on like, hey, this is what we do is we're going to be able to customize this message for 10 different audiences. Well, I can do that now for presentation purposes only, but it allows me to then very quickly go like, and this is how that might come to life with different hosts. Now, these are clone voices and we did this, disclaim. But man, it's really helpful to be able to be like, this is what it'd be like for a sports audience. This is what it'd be like for a news audience. But what I'm simulating is that a host is going to bring it to life, but it's helpful in the front end to be able to go, so I guess I'm saying two things. I can break through with ideas at the beginning. I really like that. And it allows me to quickly iterate on ideas to be able to share, to get people excited about how something can come to life.
Right. Right. Well, and I think to your point, it is always easier to edit something than it is to start from scratch. And if you have that already taken care of, then step number one is taken care of. Number two, you don't know what creative is going to sound like coming out of a host's mouth, right? And I remember when I was in radio, one of the things that we used to do, which I'm sure you guys, Stu, were you in radio?
A little bit, not a ton, but a little, tiny bit.
But we would do spec spots, right? So like if we were trying to get an advertiser on air and I could get a production person to be nice to me that day, I would get a spec spot for a client and I would take it out and say, hey, this is what we could do for you. And one of the things with audio that is so difficult is that it isn't always super tangible, and being able to bring it to life is so powerful. So I love that you use those examples, because I do think we have a tendency of, almost like the sky is falling a bit when it comes to AI, like, oh, AI wants to come in and we're just going to listen to AI generated podcasts where both hosts are not actual people and all the ads are AI generated. And it's like we take it to this extreme instead of using it for the tool that it is to get us where we want to be, which is really authentic conversations that connect with audiences, right?
Yeah. Yes, I agree with that statement.
I mean, I see that. I think that has changed. Thankfully, that discourse has changed quite a bit in just the past couple of months. I think, first of all, I mean, if you're not looking at audio or AI and experimenting with that in any aspect of your business, you're falling vastly behind, right? That's just because the nature of the business now, and especially everyone sitting in next year planning, there's a lot more action from enterprises who are looking into what we're doing to onboard those capabilities. But you're absolutely right. I think the the media discourse around it has, it's always about fear, and this is a big change. It's a big technological change. It's a novel idea in many ways, and it's easy to jump to those conclusions that, oh my God, no, we're just going to replace all hosts, all creativity is just going to be AI. There's nothing further from the truth, really. Well, what I'm excited about is that most people have gone past that now. If you're using AI, like Stu is using it as well for coming up with ideas, it's like you have this sidekick, right? A creative sounding board, pun intended, to throw ideas at and be able to get further in your creativity. And this is the cool thing about AI and the creatives that we work with. So we work with big global creative agencies and small production teams as well, where they have creatives. I mean, the bigger holding companies now, they're putting AI as a skill set on their graphic designers, their creatives. You have to have that skill set for the future to be able to be a good creative, because it's just another tool, right? Like you learn something else, like Adobe or Premiere or Avid or any of the tools you're using today to cut video or produce anything. So it's a real skill set that's coming through. But the core of it all is really, that's just an augmentation. It's not replacing creativity. And Stu said something important. What I love about this discussion is that everyone comes to the conclusion that it is another toolkit that makes you better, and you can produce ideas and test ideas faster. Right. One of my favorite use cases with Wondercraft is that fact that instead of spending, and we've all been there, brands spending weeks on this perfect ad that's going to rule them all, the one ring of power, the one.
It's funny coming from you right now.
From an elf, I'm just thinking.
Yes, yeah. Well, you were there 3,000 years ago.
Sauron, the one ad to run across radio and streaming and all podcasting. And
yes, but I want to just jump in on you, because that is exactly how it is approached.
Right.
That's what's wild, is like
Right.
it is being made out of granite.
Right.
Like, and it's like, we're going to make this one ad, and then it just takes, everybody just grinds to a halt.
Right. And there's, when you look at other media, when the way that you can look at graphic design, for instance, and create variations faster, way further along in that way. Audio is really hard to write for. I think you said that as well, Heather. I think there's such an art to writing for audio. And this is why video is also one of the reasons why video is such a vastly bigger industry, right? It's 10x what the audio industry is. And it's hard to write for audio. And I think it's kind of a lost art because you don't have the tools to be able to quickly draft ideas and be able to not only create that one ad to rule them all, but create 20 of them in different accents. Make it a Boston accent, make it a Southern drawl, make it different music in the background and see what really works. And I think that is what makes a great advertising fueled industry as well, that you have variety in this. We see more of the ad fatigue bubble up now in podcasting. That used to be a big part about the audio space in general. We didn't think that was going to happen in podcasting with host reads and everything, but as advertising is growing and scaling with programmatic ads or dynamic inserted ads and pre-produced ads, that's always a fear. So I think the creativity needs to be part of that. And I'm really happy to like celebrate all the audio creatives out there. That's a big mission of mine, and Stu knows that as well. Like being able to celebrate people writing for audio, because it's a very difficult art to make that really happen, which is why I love Stu and what he does. He's a ninja at it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he is a ninja at it.
Sometimes I just feel like a run of the mill crook.
Wet bandit, some might say.
Yeah, something like that.
It's the crowbar. It just
I gotta have my calling card. Yeah, the crowbar, isn't it? I keep trying to I'm making sure. I'm like, I need to get a little clamp on my desk so I can just like, it can just be here.
At first I thought maybe it was like a shepherd's crook,
That's
like
what I thought too, but
no. It's I'm a wet bandit. I'm committed to the bit. I showed up to win, guys.
I love it. I love it. Well, so I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are about the host read ad. So one of the issues that I deal with is we work with so many independent podcasters, and these are people who know their subject super well, right? Whether it's that, they're a doctor and they have a show about like how to raise a toddler, or whether they're a pickleball pro, or maybe they're a scientist and they want this show all about their science, subjects and things. They are really good at their subject. But one of the challenges I think we face is that we send them talking points, and they're the person in the conversation that knows the very least about marketing or how to actually create a really good ad. And then we say, go ahead and create an ad. And then 3 weeks into the campaign, we say, well, that ad's not actually performing. Can you make it better? And they're like, what do you mean make it better? Like, they don't know how to craft an ad that's going to convert. They've got the talking points and they know their audience, but they don't know about marketing. They don't know about positioning a product. I guess I'm curious, is there a world where we could blend that, right? It's like we want that authenticity of the host, and we want the story about how they started using this product and, it revolutionized their life or what have you, right? It's like we want that, but we also have to realize that these hosts aren't necessarily the best people to create an ad. What are your thoughts, Stu?
Yeah, it's a clear and present danger, what you're talking about. I think that, first of all, like there is a big it depends to it, okay? Because it's like, I would want to know, there's so many questions I would have in that scenario, right? Where, let's say, host was given talking points on some travel show about cruises on the Mississippi River, whatever, right? Something more niche. And they're given talking points, and all the information you've given me is they're given talking points. Sounds like they did 1 or 2 drops, and we're saying performance is in trouble. Man, there's a lot of questions. It's like, how big is the total buy? What's the awareness of this brand? What was the offer? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So there's a lot of it depends on, it's not just, I guess what I'm trying to say with that is it doesn't just all hang on this person's delivery.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
And that's what's too bad. I think of a few things when I given this kind of question. Like, one, the host can advocate for themselves as much as they see fit. And I've been very impressed with certain folks that if I was a host, let's say, I would identify what have been my most successful campaigns or what have been my friends' most successful campaigns and create a framework of my own to go. Like, some of the biggest names in podcasting have been like it since they were little names. They had standards and boundaries.
Right.
They said, if you're going to send me talking points, it's going to look like this. And you had to comply because you're buying time on their stage. So consider that. At Oxford, we've got a very specific framework that we use. It's called Audiolytics. It's based on persuading in audio, but also applies across the board. And it very much is a framework. I mean, I've got it here on my desk, but when all else fails, it's like fall back on a structure. A lot of times the talking points that hosts are giving have some massive gaps from an audiolytics standpoint. And that's kind of like you're talking about positioning, substantiation. There's kind of key areas. So, and I mean, I wrote an article for Brian Barletta a couple years ago about that, how to write a podcast ad that sells. But like, what's the framework that you're going to use? And then I feel like part of what's kind of laced into your question is like, well, maybe just maybe, and I agree with you, like somebody's just not cut out to do it. Then a produced spot might be the best thing for them. Right. And that's actually kind of an interesting use case, even for Wondercraft. Is, it's like a host that is self-aware enough to recognize that they go like, I know you want to advertise on my show. Actually, the most successful way to do that is with a produced unit. And I have a partnership with Wondercraft, and we can create a custom spot for your advertisement on my Mississippi River Cruise show in a matter of minutes,
Right.
So I guess a couple of thoughts. Yeah, I guess to summarize it is like, because everything to me is kind of like, look, any problem, right? If the other person's a problem, there is no solution. If there's a problem, look in increasingly large circles around your own desk. So I would say to the host, you figure out what your standards are for you to make an ad that works on your show. And then you tell your partners that's what you need. That would be like job one. Job two is, if you're the one making the ad, or you're the brand, or you're an agency, have some kind of framework. For us, it's Audiolytics. But how do you know that you're hitting all the spots that you need to persuade? And then the third point would be, hey, you know what? As crazy as it might sound, maybe host reads don't work for you as a host. Well, then find a way to make a produced spot on your show. Would be really cool if there was a really short path to do that. Oh, there is. It's called wondercraft.ai.
Right.
Yeah, and just piggybacking on that a little bit, I think a use case that we see a lot actually with podcast networks that use Wondercraft across their team is the drafting and kind of rapid prototyping of host reads. So you can start writing for different hosts, knowing what they're talking about. You can even use, their transcripts to kind of infer, ideas for the host reads and come up with suggestions. This is like drafting in audio, right? And it's great because you can also save a ton of time. One big pet peeve I have about the audio industry and the podcast industry is that there's quite high barriers for brands to come in because it's very costly for platforms and sales teams to service smaller brands that want to come in and test podcasting. That's why, it's great to have agencies to help them shepherd that. But being able to make that whole creative process much smoother rather than having a big talent come into the studio and do test reads and come up with different concepts. This is a great way to be able to sit in your creative team, come up with host reads for specific hosts for that brand. And then if the brand really likes the tonality and the story, the host and the talent agrees with it, they can then go into the studio and actually record it. So you can save a ton of time there. And most of all, like, we all know this. I mean, with Acast, we have over 100,000 podcasts that are trying to manage. And Heather, you live through this now. Like it's a big process to kind of handle talent and getting that creative process going and getting a campaign live. And then I think this goes for all media. You got to do some testing, right? Pre-produced ads. Can you try those in different ways to A/B test what's really working? And as you're running host reads as well to see what's really standing out. You got to try to find those signals. But that's a use case I really like. And again, it comes down to making it efficient, and everyone around the table kind of wins in that scenario where you're trying to be more creative. The talent doesn't have to spend so much time on it. The brand can get a better result and can approve something before you actually go live. And the platform can probably work faster and start onboarding more brands and getting more money into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of doing split testing. And I think one of the issues that Oskar, maybe you and I had spoken about is in audio, we kind of have taken this place it and wait approach, right? Where it's like, hey, we're going to
Right.
place this ad, it's going to run for a month, and then we're going to evaluate it. We're going to see how it performs. Most other digital platforms, it's like, we're going to place this ad in 24 hours. We're going to decide if it's working. And if it's not, we're going to
Right.
change it. And I mean, I'm sure in some instances, it's not even 24 hours, right? Or we're going to place a variety of ads. We're going to place all of these different iterations and we're going to see which one does work the best. And I think that because audio is a heavier lift, it's not like something where we can just say, hey, we're going to create a whole bunch of different ad reads and see which one actually pulls. And so I think that a tool like you've created is really amazing because you could even create the framework of the ad. Maybe it's the same start to the ad, but the finish is different. And maybe it's even just the CTA that's different. I mean, you could change so many small variables within an ad and still split test it where it's got the foundation of the host, right? Like the host has done 99% of the work and AI is filling in the cracks. Stu, are you guys using AI for that at all? Or do you have any kind of visions of how more split testing could work with AI?
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. So at the CAO summit this summer, one of the folks that was on the creative panel was Cassandra LaPrairie from Wise, and
Yes, I love her.
so she had something to say that I thought was really good that stuck with me, and it's, do you have confidence that you know what you're looking to test? And do you have conviction that the test is going to help you measure that? So I think it's really important,
Mm.
those two things, confidence and conviction. Do you have confidence that you know what you're looking to test? And do you have the conviction the test you propose is going to help you measure that? So I think that's what's really important, because the truth is with these tools, and there's a variety of them that we've partnered with and worked with, and being able to do dynamic audio, serve it to different audiences using different signals. We did a campaign that we customized to every state. So we had creative that was customized based on every state where you were listening.
Mhm.
Right. But the question is, what are you looking to test? And I guess a more clear way to say that is like, what's the one thing that if you could have the answer to, you'd invest more in audio? Because you could test a ton. And that's
Mhm.
kind of this, like, a lot of bland creative more
Mhm.
quickly, more tests more quickly. Yeah. And it's like, why?
Right.
Like, what do you do? Like, we could customize it based on the weather and where they are. And it's like, Oskar Serrander, this advertisement is just for you. And it's like just because I always just think it's Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. It's like, you got it so busy asking whether you could, you never stop to ask whether you should. And it's like,
Right.
I think that's what Cassandra's pointing us at is, do you have confidence that the thing you're testing is going to make an impact, and
Mhm.
conviction that the test you proposed is going to actually allow you to measure it? And that does get complicated, but I would sum up my answer with, the AI tools are getting, there's like a new one every day that's making this stuff more easier and better. The same is true when it comes to measurement and the ability to do A/B testing in audio. And there's a variety of ways to do that. And I think, Oskar, you're developing more stuff even on the back end of being able to deliver dynamic creative as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing next, I don't know when this is dropping, Heather, but a big part is we, again, doubling down on that kind of creative tool to come up with new ideas. One thing that we're doing soon is the ability to do a lot of quick variations, right? So I
Mhm.
want an idea for this host read or for this pre-produced ad that I'm planning on. I get the ad copy right. I can start shifting out different parts of it dynamically and be able to create new variations from that quite quickly. Just a
Mhm.
quicker way to come up with those ideas, right? One thing I want to note on here is that I always grew up with this. I don't know if this rings true to you guys. Like, ideas are cheap, right? Ideas
Yeah.
are cheap, and
Hmm.
activation, like really doing, is the hardest part.
Yep.
What I learned now, recently, it's dawned on me quite quickly that when we're moving into the age of, I guess we call it the age of intelligence now, at least that's what Sam Altman calls it, the age of AI, and the ability to, we're going to be able, like you said, more bland ideas out there. That's going to happen, right? So it's inevitable because execution and creating ideas is going to be easier, cheaper, and faster. We already see that on video channels, right? It's just an abundance of content. But what really matters in the future are ideas and really taste. And I think this rings true for brands as well. It's about being brave about the creative ideas you do and actually executing on. That really, really matters. But getting there should be a creative process of finding your own formula and being able to experiment a lot more. And that's really a big backbone of what I want to create for the future. So you have a way to really get your creative ideas in there and testing it faster, doing the variations, and really finding the formula for it, which I think is a very important part of the future of a growing space as well. So I like that. I like the testing is such a big part of this, and I feel like it's not really talked about enough, maybe in the industry. To your point, Heather, you kind of bank it on like, oh, it's a great host. All the listeners love this host. That's why they tune into their podcast, right? It's such a powerful medium. But I think there's more to it. It's not only the host read in that aspect. It needs to be some sort of connected tissue with the audience, and you need to find that formula, I guess.
I love what you said, Stu, and I think that it is hilarious to me when you talk to folks and they are like, oh yeah, well, we can target by the weather. We can target by, the part of New York City that they live in. It's just like, I mean, it's like sometimes I'm
you
like,
want a
come
spicy
on, really?
take? You want a spicy take on that? They all bring out the same example. They're like, oh, for raincoat sales, wiper blades. The one example I ever hear is rain.
Always.
It's over. So it's over. So we've done it. We succeeded. Let's go to the next thing. I'm sorry. I just get worked up. And I wanted to say on taste, Oscar's point on taste. I mean, I'm a criminal today. All right. I'm an outlaw. All right. So I just go with it. The algorithms are wrecking us, right? With great power comes great responsibility, and that it's a great homogenization. So you saying that about taste is really important. And I think the way to get taste, and it's like all of us, like Ira Glass, the godfather of audio in our generation, at least, right? Is like this idea we get into making stuff because we have taste. We have some inkling of taste, but then we spend our career trying to raise our ability of our craft up to that taste. And we get as far as we get. That's fine. That's great. But man, that's analog. I believe it, that's analog. It's like you've got to listen to different music. Don't just give what it's telling you recommendations. It'll flatten. It flattens. It homogenizes and it makes it the same, which makes sense. It's limiting risk because it's predicting. That makes so much sense. But I just wanted to harp on that, like taste in audio is like you've got to expand your horizons, man. Get outside, listen to a show like 20,000 Hertz that's all about the world's most interesting sounds, so that when you go into a tool like Wondercraft, you're bringing your genuine life experience and freaking experience life and bring that to the work, right? Because that's the danger I see on the side of the algorithm land. Like I already said, is like more bland stuff, more blandly, more quickly. It's all just going to be mayonnaise and Wonder Bread.
Yeah, but it's going to happen. And that's kind of part of the evolution of all media. I mean, remember YouTube and all the cat videos, right? You kind of have to go through that phase. And what I think about podcasting is it's such a small space if you compare it to YouTube or TikTok and any of that, right?
Yep.
Like, can podcasting is a smaller part of an audio industry that I think is expanding in all kinds of directions, right? With new formats. We're going to be less tethered to our screens in the future. It's going to be more wearables and more eyeglasses and contacts that we can talk to. Audio is going to have an interface that's way more different. So this is just the beginning, and podcasting is a small part of it, but it will grow. But I believe that you need more flavors. That flywheel that I talked about before is so important for a space to grow. So you got to allow for some of the cat videos to come in. But here's the thing. The microphone doesn't make the podcast, right?
That's right.
And you can shoot a film with a Red camera that costs $500,000. But someone on YouTube is going to crush you popularity-wise with an iPhone because they had a better story. And that's true in all media. So I think we shouldn't be fearful of podcasting kind of expanding and morphing as it is now, which I kind of embrace, and I'm here for it. It's very interesting. But what's going to matter is like, what is good content at the end of the day, and what are people actually going to go to and listen to and enjoy and tell their friends about? That's going to be true whether you're creating in a full production studio in Manhattan or you're sitting in a basement in Austin with your microphone.
Absolutely. And I guess what my point was is that because things are so homogenized, we don't necessarily need to kill ourselves targeting people with ad messages, right? I mean, the reality is that most of my friends are like me, and most of all of the audiences are like one another, right? And so, I've got friends all over the country, and you know what? We're not all that different. Yes, maybe this one lives more in the country, this one lives more in the city, maybe this one walks their kid to school and that one drives them or whatever, right? I mean, there of course are differences, but I don't think that when we're targeting an audience it's as vastly different as people make it out to seem like it is. And so I think that when we're talking about trying to partner brands with creative, my assessment is that it's probably not as hard as we make it out to be. And I also do believe that it is constantly going to be about upping our game from a creative place, right? And I mean, and I think, like you said, Oskar, I'm a very amateur painter, but like I can work for the next 20 years of my life trying to become a wonderful painter. But the reality is that a computer program is going to be able to create something that is far better than what I could create. In 20 years, I don't even know what it will look like. But how can I put a spin on something? How could I take a creative approach that is going to be different? And so it is about using tools, but at the end of the day, that creative piece and that idea that makes you stand out. It's like I think about that, you know, this is probably way overused, but that YouTube channel where they interview like entrepreneurs and successful people and make them eat hot sauce while they're doing it, right? It's like you take something that everybody else is doing and then you say, oh, but instead of me just talking to you, I'm going to put you through a painful experience while I'm doing it. And all of a sudden that becomes so much more successful than if we were just going to sit down and talk, right? So that's way overplayed now, but at the time it was really innovative. And so, that innovation and that piece is what ultimately, I do believe, creates a connection to that content, regardless of the type of content it is, really, right?
100%. And then shout out to Sean Evans. He's a fantastic interviewer. If you watch that, it's great. Great questions and a great format. You're absolutely right. I mean, you're just yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm interested to see how the space evolves in that fashion in podcasting, and what new formats can come out of it as well.
Yeah, I mean it's relational, it's experiential. I look at those pumpkins behind Oskar. It's like those represent people. Those are creations and they're experienced. They were experienced when they were made and they're experienced. Like life is to be experienced. Humans make art to experience something themselves and to share it with another. I think that's what's beautiful about it. And I think audio is inherently set up to do that as well. It's such a relational media. And I just think, like you were talking about, it got me thinking about a recent conversation with Steve Keller. Creative is like one of the number one drivers when it comes to the performance of something. And first and foremost is just brand size. It's a question of getting your brand out there in front of people. Right. And audio, it's like all you have to do when you talk about podcast is like, it's just like the early days. It's like, oh, it's Blue Apron. Right. I mean, it's like the stuff that they did the SNL skits about. And it's like, what a great channel to do that. And then, okay, so if you're accomplishing that job, then the next thing is the strength of the creative and have fun with it. And I think you're exactly right. It's like, it's that human insight experience. The Rick Rubin book, The Creative Act, is such a good little like daily meditation you can read. That's all about the stuff that you're articulating. It's like that's what needs to be brought to the space because gravity and algorithms and just the path of least resistance will do what it does, which is fine. That creates such an opportunity then to be excellent and to really put something out there that gives people something that's a joy to experience and also introduces them to a tremendous product or service that will actually help their life.
Right. It's also these my kids created this. I'm more on my kids to be creative with pumpkins than their math homework. I think the skill of the future is to have creativity, ideas, and just have that skill set. It's going to be more important than anything in the future for human creativity and yeah, in the workspace, I believe. I do.
I think you're exactly
I'm on
right.
them about
I think
math
you're
too,
you're
but
you're doing well. You're a good dad. We affirm you. Now, is that a smile or is that a woo bat on the one? That's just what the one kind of
there's a little creature.
almost,
This is
yeah.
like a
It
two.
almost looks like the woo bat, but I know it's a
Yeah.
smile. Anyway, all right. Well, because Wu-Tang's for the children. All right, thank you.
That's right. That's right. It is difficult to be a parent these days and figure out what you should recommend. Which
No
career
kidding.
should you recommend your child pursue that AI is going to take over by the time they graduate college? So, well, it was such a pleasure having you both on. I just really appreciate it. Love the conversation and love the creativity that we brought to this conversation about creativity. So thank you guys so much. If people want to connect with you, Stu, where's a good place for them to find you?
So oxfordroad.com for Oxford Road, and then also my name, stewredwine.com. So oxfordroad.com and stewredwine.com.
Awesome. And how about you, Oskar?
Yeah, you can find everything about Wondercraft on wondercraft.ai. And yeah, you can connect on LinkedIn or X, on Threads. I don't know what I'm doing in those places, but there I am. Yeah, happy to speak to anyone interested.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show, you guys.
Thanks,
For
Heather.
having us.
Pleasure.
Happy Halloween.
Thanks. Yes.
Thank you guys for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed this creative episode of the Podcast Advertising Playbook. If you're listening to this podcast, which I hope you are, please go over to YouTube and just watch a couple minutes of the video because, you know, it'll just connect it all for you and make it a whole lot more fun. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again next time. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Advertising Playbook, your source to a better understanding of the podcast advertising industry.